The room was too quiet for a place meant to hold so many minds. Elias Marr noticed it the moment he stepped inside. The air itself felt careful, as if even sound had been warned to behave. The chamber was wide and circular, its walls smooth and softly glowing, changing color in slow waves that matched no pattern he could recognize. Seats rose in gentle levels from the center, each designed differently, shaped for bodies that were not human. Elias adjusted the collar of his plain uniform and walked to the position marked for him. Human seating was simple, flat, almost dull compared to the elegant designs around it. That suited him fine. He sat down and rested his hands on his knees. Around him, the other delegates were already present. Some were tall and thin, their skin reflecting light like glass. Others were low to the ground, surrounded by faint clouds of shifting color. A few looked almost human, which somehow made them more unsettling. None of them spoke aloud. There was no need. They communicated in ways Elias could not hear. He had been warned about this. Humans did not share the silent channels that most advanced species used. The summit organizers had called it a limitation with polite smiles. Elias preferred to think of it as privacy. Still, the silence pressed in on him. He could feel eyes on his back, on his face, on his thoughts, or at least he imagined he could. This was humanity's first real invitation to the Concord gathering. Not because humans were powerful or wise, but because the galaxy had grown too crowded to ignore them anymore. Elias knew that much. What he did not know was why the room felt tense. Then he noticed her. She stood on the far side of the chamber, her form upright and still. Her species was called the Lithari, though the name meant little to Elias. She looked close to human in shape, but smoother, as if sculpted instead of born. Her eyes were dark and reflective, like deep water. Her skin held a faint shimmer, not bright, but alive. She had been silent the entire time, even by their standards. As Elias watched, she moved. She stepped away from her assigned place and crossed the room. That alone was strange. Movement during the opening silence was rare. Protocol mattered deeply to these species. Elias had studied their rules for weeks. No one broke them lightly. She walked steadily, not fast, not slow. The glowing floor dimmed slightly beneath her feet, reacting to her presence. Other delegates shifted. Some leaned back. Some froze completely. Elias felt his pulse quicken. She stopped directly in front of him. Up close, she was taller than he expected. She looked down at him, her face calm, unreadable. The silence deepened, becoming something heavy and sharp. Elias did not stand. He did not speak. He waited. Then, without a word, she climbed onto him. Not suddenly, not roughly. She placed one knee on the edge of his seat, then the other, settling carefully onto his lap as if this were the most natural thing in the universe. Her weight was light, barely more than pressure. Her posture was balanced, controlled. She faced him, and she smiled. The room reacted all at once. Elias could not hear the mental shockwave that passed through the delegates, but he could see its effects. Colors flared, bodies stiffened. A few beings recoiled as if struck by an unseen force. Every rule Elias had studied shattered in a single moment. Public physical contact was forbidden. Crossing assigned spaces was forbidden. Direct focus on a single delegate without permission was forbidden. And yet, she had done all of it, openly, calmly, without fear. Elias's heart hammered in his chest. He did not touch her. He did not push her away. He breathed. He remembered his training. When you do not understand the rules, do not rush to break them. Her eyes searched his face, not aggressively, but closely, as if she were looking for something specific. Her smile did not change. Elias met her gaze, slowly, carefully. He allowed the tension in his shoulders to ease. He relaxed his hands, letting them rest open at his sides. He tilted his head slightly, a gesture he used often back home when listening. A small, patient smile touched his lips. Around them, the silence held. To the other species, this moment was chaos. Meanings collided. Signals overlapped. The act could be read as dominance, submission, bonding, threat, or madness, depending on cultural lens. Their shared mental channels filled with noise, but Elias had none of that. All he had was what he could see. Her breathing was steady. Her posture was controlled, not tense. Her eyes were not sharp or angry. They were focused, almost relieved. She was not attacking. She was choosing. That understanding settled in Elias's chest like a quiet truth. So he stayed still. Minutes passed, or seconds. Time felt strange in the chamber. The lights dimmed slightly, responding to the collective unrest. The summit moderators, artificial minds woven into the station itself, hesitated. This situation had not been planned for. Finally, she leaned closer. Her forehead almost touched his. Still, she said nothing. Elias spoke first, softly, his voice sounding loud in the quiet room. "Hello," he said. "I'm Elias." The sound of spoken language rippled through the chamber like a stone dropped into water. Several delegates flinched. Spoken words were considered crude by many species, unnecessary. The woman's smile widened just a little. She closed her eyes for a brief moment, as if savoring the sound. Then she moved away. She stepped back off his seat and returned to standing, her expression calm once more. She inclined her head toward him, not deeply, but enough to be unmistakable. And just like that, she walked back to her place. The room did not recover quickly. The summit resumed in fragments. Mental exchanges restarted, cautious and uncertain. Elias could feel the attention still focused on him, sharper now, heavier. He sat quietly, replaying the moment in his mind. Why him? He was not the highest-ranking human present. He was not a strategist or a scientist. He was chosen because he was ordinary. A diplomat trained to listen more than speak. Across the chamber, the woman stood motionless again. But something had changed. Elias could feel it, even without telepathy. The rules were no longer solid. They had bent. And somewhere in the deep, silent space between species, a door had cracked open. After the moment passed, the room did not return to normal. Elias felt it in the way the air seemed heavier, as if everyone was now careful with every thought. The delegates no longer ignored him. Even without telepathy, he could sense a tension pressing in from all directions. He kept his face calm. Inside, his thoughts were anything but. The woman, Lathari, they had said, stood at her place, as if nothing had happened. Her posture was straight, hands relaxed at her sides. She did not look at Elias again. That alone made the moment feel unreal, like something imagined. The summit moderators finally reasserted control. A low vibration passed through the chamber, a signal that order was being restored. Lights along the walls shifted into steady patterns. Information began flowing again, silent and invisible. Elias sat still and listened to what little he could hear. Spoken language was rare here, but not forbidden. Still, no one spoke aloud. Not yet. He wondered what they were saying about him, about her, about what it meant. He forced himself to breathe, slowly. Humans had prepared for this summit for years. They expected being ignored. They expected quiet dismissal. What they had not prepared for was becoming the center of attention without understanding why. Elias reminded himself of one simple rule his mentor had drilled into him. When you do not understand the game, do not rush to play. Time passed. Eventually, a soft tone sounded near Elias's seat. A small light appeared on the surface beside him. It pulsed gently, waiting. A request, He hesitated only a moment before placing his hand near it. The light brightened. A synthetic voice spoke in calm, neutral English. Human delegate Elias Marr, you are requested to participate in a focused exchange. Elias nodded.
I am available.
The light faded. Across the chamber, a similar signal appeared near the Lothari woman. She turned her head slightly toward him. For the first time since the incident, their eyes met again. Something passed between them then. Not a message, not words, just recognition. The floor beneath Elias's seat shifted, smoothly, silently. It carried him toward the center of the chamber. Other delegates watched closely. No one objected. The Lothari woman moved as well, meeting him halfway. They stopped several steps apart. The space between them felt charged, not dangerous, but full. Elias stood with his hands visible, relaxed. He remembered how she had studied his posture before. He gave her the same respect. Now, the moderators hesitated again. Finally, the synthetic voice spoke once more.
Lothari Delegate Sael, you have violated multiple protocols.
Clarification is required.
Sael did not respond right away.
She turned her gaze fully toward Elias. Then she did something unexpected. She spoke. Her voice was soft, measured, and slightly unfamiliar, as if unused, but the words were clear. I chose him. The chamber reacted instantly. Colors flared, shapes shifted, silent uproar. Elias felt a strange chill. The moderators pressed on. State your reason, bathed. Because he cannot hear the lie. The words echoed.
Elias frowned slightly.
I'm sorry, he said gently. I don't understand. Sael finally looked away from him and faced the room. None of you notice it, she said. Because it has always been there. A ripple of unease passed through the chamber. Elias felt suddenly very small. The moderators asked, clarify. Sal drew a slow breath. The harmony you enforce, the unity you praise, it is not natural. It is maintained. The word hung heavy. Maintained meant control. Elias's heart beat faster, but he stayed quiet.
Whoa.
Sael continued. My species was taught that silence equals peace, that shared thought equals trust, that discomfort means error. She looked around the room. But today, when I reached for his mind, there was nothing to grasp. Murmurs of thought surged. Sael's gaze returned to Elias. Not emptiness. Difference. Elias swallowed. He spoke carefully. Humans don't share thoughts, he said. We never have. That is not what I mean, Sael replied. You are not closed. You are uneven. Some delegates recoiled. Others leaned forward. Sael lifted her hand slightly, palm open. Your mind does not settle. It moves, contradicts itself, questions itself. She smiled faintly.
It cannot be tuned. The word struck deep. The moderators interrupted.
This deviation does not justify, it justifies everything, Sael said quietly. Silence fell again. Elias felt every eye turn to him. He cleared his throat. Sael, he said, testing the name. Why did you come to me? She answered without hesitation.
Because I needed to know if freedom still existed.
The chamber seemed to shrink. Elias felt the weight of that word press down on him. Freedom. He chose his next words carefully. What made you think we had it? Sael's expression softened. Because your species argues with itself, she said, endlessly, loudly, even painfully. A few delegates shifted uncomfortably.
You disagree without breaking, she continued.
You doubt without collapsing. You fail without surrendering identity. She paused. A mind like that cannot be owned. Elias felt something tighten in his chest. He had never thought of humanity that way. The moderators attempted to regain control.
This exchange is destabilizing. The Concord exists to prevent... To prevent what? Elias asked suddenly.
The sound of his voice cut through the chamber. He had not planned to speak. The words came anyway.
To prevent conflict? He continued.
Or to prevent choice? The silence that followed was different, sharper, watching. Elias met the unseen gaze of the room.
Humans fight, he said. We argue. We mess things up. But we do it in the open.
No one reaches into our heads to smooth it over. He looked at Sale. If someone did, we'd call it wrong. Sale inclined her head slightly. Agreement. A strange feeling moved through the chamber. Not anger.
Not fear.
Uncertainty. Several delegates attempted to probe Elias mentally. He felt nothing. No pressure. No warmth. No pull. The absence spoke louder than any shield. One by one, the attempts stopped. The moderator's voice sounded strained.
Human delegate, are you aware of the implications of this resistance?
Elias nodded slowly. I'm starting to be... Sale stepped closer to him. Not onto him this time, but near enough to be clear.
When I sat on you, she said softly, I broke the illusion. Elias blinked.
Illusion? That authority flows one way, she replied. From the many into the few. From the system into the self. She looked at him. You did not react as expected. You did not submit. You did not dominate. She smiled again, that same quiet smile. You waited. Elias exhaled. He understood then the galaxy had built peace by removing friction. Humanity had survived by living inside it. Two different answers to the same fear. Around them, delegates shifted, unsettled. Some began to withdraw mentally. Others watched Elias with new interest. Not as a problem, as a possibility. The moderators fell silent. For the first time since the summit began, no one was guiding the room. And in that space, that dangerous open space, something new was forming. Elias did not know what would come next. But he knew one thing clearly. They were no longer invisible. The silence did not break on its own. It stretched, thin and uneasy, like a surface that might crack if touched. Elias felt it pressing on his chest, not as fear, but as awareness. Every being in the chamber was paying attention now, not watching, measuring. Sale stepped back from him and returned to her place, but the distance no longer felt real. What she had revealed could not be undone by space or protocol. The moderators did not speak. That alone was terrifying to the delegates. The Concord had always been guided. Decisions were smoothed before they became arguments. Discomfort was softened before it became doubt. Now, nothing stepped in. A delegate near the upper tier shifted, its form rippling like disturbed water. Elias felt a faint pressure brush the edge of his thoughts. Not an attack, but a test. Nothing happened. The pressure faded. A low wave of unrest moved through the chamber. Elias stayed where he was. He did not raise his voice. He did not challenge anyone directly. He had learned long ago that calm was sometimes louder than force. Sale watched the room carefully. Her expression had changed. The relief Elias had seen earlier was gone, replaced by focus. This was not a moment anymore. It was a turning point. A new voice finally entered the space, spoken aloud, like Elias's had been.
This is unacceptable.
The speaker was tall, its body supported by long, jointed limbs. Its surface shimmered with layered light, shifting with its mood. The translation systems named it as a senior delegate of the Core Accord. "You introduce instability," the delegate said, looking directly at Elias. "Your presence disrupts established balance." Elias nodded once. "I believe you," he said simply. The delegate paused. That was not the answer it expected.
You admit fault? Elias shook his head. No, I admit difference. Soft movement passed through the room.
Sale turned her head slightly toward the speaker. "Difference is not disorder," she said. "It is only uncomfortable to systems built on sameness." The Core Accord delegate's lights flared. "Your species benefits from the Concord's protection," Sale replied calmly. "My species benefits from not being erased." The word hung heavy. Erased. Elias felt the truth of it settle into him. Not death. Not destruction. Something quieter. Being shaped. Until nothing sharp remained. Until nothing truly personal survived. The delegate addressed the moderators. "This discussion exceeds permitted parameters." Still, the moderators did not respond. For the first time, Elias understood why. They were not deciding anymore. They were listening. Another delegate moved, this one small and wrapped in layered membranes that pulsed gently. It spoke hesitantly, aloud.
We were told harmony was natural, it said.
That resistance was a flaw. Sale looked toward it. "We were all told that." The small delegate shifted. "When I sensed the human mind," it said, "there was confusion, noise." Elias smiled faintly. "That sounds right. But also warmth," the delegate continued. "Unstable, but alive." The room grew still again. Elias felt something change. Not suddenly, but deeply. A realization spreading without force. The Core Accord delegate stiffened. "This is exactly the danger," it said. "Unchecked individuality leads to collapse." Elias met its gaze. "Or growth," he replied. The delegate's lights flickered sharply. "Your history is filled with conflict." "Yes," Elias said. "And learning." He took a slow breath. "We didn't survive by agreeing all the time. We survived by arguing, failing, and trying again."
He looked around the room.
"You built peace by removing conflict. We built peace by living through it." The words settled like stones dropped into deep water. Sile stepped forward again, addressing the chamber. "The Concord does not trust its members," she said. "That is why it listens for them." A ripple of discomfort passed through the delegates. "You fear chaos," she continued. "So you silence it. You fear pain.
So you dull it. You fear choice.
So you guide it." Her voice softened. "But guided minds do not grow. They only persist." The moderators finally spoke, their voice quieter than before. "If this structure is removed, instability will rise."
Yes, Sael said. It will. Elias nodded.
"That doesn't mean it's wrong." The Core Accord delegate turned fully toward him. "Your species would allow suffering," Elias answered honestly.
We already do. The difference is we don't pretend it isn't there.
Silence followed. Then something unexpected happened. A delegate near the far side of the chamber severed its mental connection. Elias did not feel it, but he saw the effect. The being straightened, its movements sharper, less fluid. It looked around as if seeing the room clearly for the first time. "I feel alone," it said aloud. Fear rippled through the chamber. Sale stepped closer, her voice steady. "You are still you," she said. "You are simply hearing yourself." The delegate hesitated. "It is loud." "It gets easier," he said. One by one, others tested the silence, not fully disconnecting, just loosening the grip. Their reactions varied: confusion, discomfort, curiosity. No one collapsed. No one shattered. The core accord delegate raised its voice. This experiment must end. The moderators hesitated. Elias realized then that the moderators were not rulers. They were reflections. They enforced what the majority believed necessary. And belief was shifting. Sale turned to Elias, her eyes searching his face. "If we step away from this," she said quietly, "there is no return." Elias met her gaze.
Humans live like that every day. She studied him for a long moment. Then she made her choice.
Sale reached out, not mentally, but physically, and placed her hand flat against her own chest. A simple gesture, personal, unshared. "I withdraw," she said aloud, "not from the Concord. From its control." The room erupted, not in violence, but in noise, thought noise, emotional noise, 1,000 reactions colliding. Elias felt none of it directly, but he saw the chaos ripple across the chamber. The moderator's voice wavered. "This action has consequences." Sile nodded. "So does obedience." Several delegates followed her lead. Not all, but enough. Bakura Accord delegate stepped back, its light patterns sharp and uncertain. Elias felt a strange mix of fear and pride. Humanity had not come here to start a revolution, and yet, simply by being what they were, they had made one possible. He realized something then. This was not about humans leading. It was about humans proving another way existed. The chamber slowly settled. Not into order, but into something raw and unfinished. The moderators spoke again, carefully. "The Concord will enter reassessment." That single sentence carried more weight than any threat. Elias let out a quiet breath. Sael looked at him once more. This time, her smile was different, not relief. "Hope. We will need guidance," she said softly. Elias shook his head. "No," he replied. "You'll need patience, and mistakes, and time." She considered that, then nodded. The summit was no longer what it had been, and it would never be again. The summit did not end when the chamber fell quiet. It only changed shape. Elias remained standing near the center long after the moderators announced reassessment. Delegates did not rush to leave. Many stayed where they were, uncertain what leaving now would mean. The mental background that once smoothed every interaction was weaker, uneven. For some, it was frightening. For others, it felt like breathing fresh air after a long time indoors. Sale stood nearby, her posture calm but alert. She watched the room as if seeing it for the first time. "This silence," she said quietly, "it feels unfinished."
Elias nodded. "That's what real conversations feel like." She looked at him.
"How do your people endure it?" Elias thought for a moment. "We don't always," he said honestly. "But we learn." Around them, delegates began forming small clusters. Instead of seamless mental agreement, there were pauses, awkward moments, spoken words, gestures, mistakes. Mistakes. Mace. Ha. Ha. Mace. Ha. Mace. Elias noticed one delegate attempt to reconnect to the shared mental field, then pull back quickly, unsettled. Another sat very still, clearly overwhelmed. There was no single reaction. That, Elias realized, was the point. The moderator's presence shifted. Their voice no longer filled the room. Instead, they observed, intervening only when requested. It was subtle, but unmistakable. Authority had loosened. A signal light appeared near Elias again. "Human delegate," the moderator said carefully. Your presence is requested for external consultation. Elias frowned. External? The effects of this session are not contained, the moderator replied. Other assemblies have noticed fluctuations. Sale's eyes narrowed slightly. Already? Yes, the moderator said. The Concord spans many systems. Elias exhaled slowly. I'll come. As the floor carried him away, he glanced back at Sale. She met his gaze and gave a small nod. Not a farewell, a promise. The corridor beyond the chamber felt different. Less controlled. The lights did not respond as quickly to movement. Elias wondered how much of the station's behavior had been shaped by constant mental agreement. He entered a smaller room lined with softly glowing panels. Several figures were already present, representatives from distant assemblies, connected through projected forms, their attention fixed on him instantly.
You are the human, one said, not accusing.
Curious. I am, Elias replied. A projection flickered. Explain what you did. Elias resisted the urge to defend himself. I didn't do anything, he said. I listened. Some reacted with confusion, others with irritation. You destabilized established unity, another said. Elias nodded.
Unity isn't the same as agreement. A pause followed.
One of the projections shifted, its form dimmer than the others. We are experiencing internal noise, it admitted. Woo! Members are expressing individual thought without moderation. Elias kept his voice calm. That's not noise, he said. That's people. The word felt strange in the room, but it stuck. You are suggesting a dangerous model, a delegate warned. I'm suggesting an honest one, Elias replied. The discussion continued, slow and tense. Elias did not argue to win. He explained how humans handled disagreement, how rules were debated, broken, rewritten, how systems failed and were rebuilt. Not cleanly, not perfectly, but freely, he said. Meanwhile, back in the chamber, Sale moved among the delegates. She did not command. She did not persuade. She asked questions. How do you feel without the guidance? What thoughts are louder now? What scares you? Some could not answer. Some answered too quickly. A few surprised themselves with what they said aloud. One delegate confessed it had never made a decision alone. Another admitted it had always felt a quiet pressure to conform, but had no word for it, until now. Sale listened. The Concord's strength had always been speed. Decisions flowed instantly. Now everything slowed, but in that slowing, understanding grew. A group of delegates attempted to reassert full mental synchronization. The connection failed to settle properly. Too many minds resisted unconsciously. The system wavered, then stabilized at a lower intensity. Not broken, changed. News spread quickly beyond the station. Other councils paused their sessions. Some demanded explanations. Others demanded the human delegation be removed. Human leadership responded with care. They did not threaten withdrawal. They did not boast. They sent a simple message. We are willing to talk. That alone unsettled many. Elias returned to the main chamber hours later. He was tired in a way that had nothing to do with his body. Sael was waiting. They are afraid, she said quietly. So are we, Elias replied. She smiled faintly. You hide it better, Elias laughed softly.
We just talk about it more. They stood together, watching delegates navigate something new.
Not freedom yet, just awareness, one being approached them hesitantly. If we continue like this, it said, there will be conflict. Yes, Elias agreed. And mistakes. Yes. And pain? Elias did not deny it. Yes. The being considered this. Then why choose it? Elias answered simply, because the alternative is not living. The being stepped back, thoughtful. The moderators announced a temporary suspension of all enforced harmonics. Participation would become optional, gradual, reversible. A compromise. Sale understood what that meant. They are afraid to let go completely. Elias nodded. So were we. Once. The chamber began to empty. Delegates left in uneven groups. Some eager, some hesitant. None the same as before. Sael walked beside Elias toward the exit. You did not come to save us, she said.
No, Elias replied. We came to listen. She stopped and faced him.
That may be more dangerous. Elias smiled. It usually is. They stood in silence for a moment, comfortable now. The Concord will not collapse, Sale said. But it will change. Change takes time, Elias said. Sale inclined her head. We have always had time. We just never used it. As Elias boarded the human transport, he looked back at the station. It looked the same as before. Smooth, quiet, ordered. But beneath that surface, something was moving. Questions. And questions, he knew, were impossible to silence once allowed to exist. The human ship did not leave immediately. Elias stood near the viewing window, watching the station float in quiet space. The lights along its outer ring pulsed softly, no longer perfectly timed. Small delays, small variations, signs of change. Behind him, other human delegates spoke in low voices. Reports were already coming in from across the Concord. Some councils had paused their sessions. Others had split into smaller groups, choosing discussion over instant agreement. A few had tried to restore full mental harmony and failed, not because they were blocked, because too many minds hesitated. Elias felt the weight of it settle slowly. Not pride. Responsibility. He was not a hero. He had not planned this. He had simply stayed still when the galaxy expected him to move. A soft sound came from the doorway. Sael entered the room. This time, there were no moderators, no observers, no shared silence pressing in. Just two people. I was told you had not left, she said. Elias turned. I wanted to see if the station would change before we did. She followed his gaze. It already has. They stood side by side, watching ships depart in uneven patterns. Some left quickly, eager to return home and process what had happened. Others lingered, unsure what they were returning to. My people are divided, Saul said. Elias nodded. So are mine. That's normal. She smiled, slightly.
You say that as if division is healthy.
It can be, Elias replied, if it leads to understanding instead of fear.
Sale considered this.
Fear has guided us for a long time. It guides everyone, Elias said. The question is whether we let it decide for us. Sale turned toward him fully. Some say humans are reckless. Elias laughed softly. We are. Some say you are dangerous. Also true. She studied his face. Yet you did not push. You did not demand. We learned the hard way, Elias said. You can't force people to be free. Silence settled between them, but it was a comfortable one now. Chosen, not enforced. The Concord has asked for human advisors, Saol said, not leaders. Listeners. Elias felt a quiet warmth in his chest. That's probably wise. They are afraid you will change everything, she added.
Elias looked back at the station.
Sile tilted her head. You already have. We just showed that it was possible. We just showed that it was possible.
What happens next is up to you. Sael was quiet for a long moment.
When I crossed the room, she said, I did not know what would happen. What did you expect? Elias asked gently. I expected resistance, she admitted. Confusion, maybe removal. And instead, he asked. She smiled, that same quiet smile from the beginning. You waited. Elias remembered that moment clearly, the weight on his lap, the eyes watching, the choice not to act. Sometimes, he said, not acting is the loudest thing you can do. Sail nodded slowly. Outside, a signal light blinked. Clearance was being granted. The human ship could leave when ready. Elias felt a strange reluctance. Will we see each other again? Saul asked. I think so, Elias replied. The galaxy feels smaller now. She looked thoughtful. Larger. He smiled. Both. Sail stepped closer. Not onto him this time. Just close enough to be personal. You gave us something, she said. Elias corrected her gently. You took it. She accepted that. Then I will try to protect it. Don't protect it too much, Elias said. Ooh. Let it breathe. She laughed softly. The sound was new, real. Saol stepped back. Safe travels, Elias Mar. And to you, he replied. She turned and left the ship without looking back. Elias watched her go, then finally turned away from the window. The ship disengaged smoothly. As it pulled away, the station grew smaller, but no less significant. It was no longer just a place of rules and silence. It was a question mark. Weeks later, the effects continued to spread. Some species rejected the change completely, returning to strict internal harmony. Others fractured, struggling through painful adjustments. A few embraced the uncertainty fully, creating new systems built on consent instead of control. The Concord did not fall. It evolved. Human delegates were invited everywhere, not as rulers, not as saviors. As examples, Elias returned home quieter than when he left. Fame followed him briefly, then faded. When asked what humans had done to change the galaxy, he always gave the same answer. Nothing special, he said. We just showed up as ourselves. And in a galaxy that had spent centuries smoothing away every rough edge, that had been enough. Far away, on a world that had never known true silence before, Sael stood alone under an open sky. Her thoughts were her own now. Messy. Uneven. Free. It scared her, and it thrilled her. She looked up at the stars and smiled. Somewhere out there was a species that argued, failed, doubted, and still chose to keep going. A species that could not be tuned, only trusted. And for the first time, the galaxy was learning how to listen.